The order is already in motion. It does not arrive with urgency. It does not demand attention. It enters the system the way all orders do, by format, by sequence, by expectation. It is received, acknowledged, copied. Its language is clean. Its verbs are precise. There is no room within it for interpretation and no space left empty where doubt might collect. It moves because it is complete. Paper passes to hand. Signals pass to receivers. Each transfer is marked, recorded, confirmed. The order does not speak loudly. It does not need to. Authority is implied by structure alone. Nothing about it suggests hesitation or contingency. It assumes a world that will respond correctly to instruction, a system that will behave as designed. Those who receive it do not pause to examine its shape. They recognize it immediately. The phrasing is familiar. The cadence is exact. It conforms to the patterns that have governed movement and stillness for as long as anyone can remember. It requires no explanation because explanation has already been standardized out of existence. The order contains no warnings. It offers no alternatives. It presents a sequence, not a question, a beginning, a continuation, an end. It assumes compliance as a natural state, like gravity or time. It is written to be followed, not weighed. Across rooms built for repetition, the order is processed. Ink dries, keys click, acknowledgements return upstream. Each confirmation reinforces the next. The system recognizes itself in the order, and so the order advances without friction. There is comfort in this familiarity. The language removes responsibility from the individual and places it where it belongs, inside the structure. No one is required to think beyond the line assigned to them. No one is asked to see further than the next step. The order asks only for accuracy. Time begins to organize itself around the instruction. Clocks are checked. Movements are synchronized. Resources are aligned not by intent, but by alignment. Everything is placed where it is meant to be, because the order says it is meant to be there. Nothing about the order indicates danger. Nothing about it signals urgency or restraint. It does not acknowledge uncertainty because uncertainty has no place in its design. It is written as if the world beyond the page is stable, measurable, and obedient. The order continues to move. Each person who handles it becomes smaller in relation to it, not by force, but by design. The system does not require belief, only participation. It does not require agreement, only execution. The order is not personal. That is its strength. By the time the last confirmation is sent, the order has passed through enough hands to feel inevitable. It has been accepted too many times to be stopped. It has been processed into reality. Nothing has happened yet, but the sequence has begun, and there is no mechanism left to interrupt it. The environment in which the order moves is built to prevent interruption. Every space it passes through has been arranged for clarity and control. Lines are drawn before movement begins. Roles are defined long before action is required. The system does not depend on improvisation. It depends on predictability. Each level exists to narrow information, not expand it. The order descends. At the upper tiers, it is handled abstractly. It is one instruction among many, placed within a broader flow of directives that govern distance, timing, and allocation. Here the order is clean. It exists as text, symbols, confirmation codes. It does not yet touch material reality. Its effects are theoretical, contained within charts and schedules. As it moves downward, it becomes more specific. Each level receives only what it is designed to process. Context is stripped away as excess. The order is broken into components, each assigned to a department, a unit, a function. No single recipient receives the full shape of it. That is not an oversight. It is a safeguard. Understanding is compartmentalized to prevent deviation. The chain of command does not encourage curiosity. It rewards precision. Questions are not forbidden, but they are unnecessary. The procedures anticipate compliance. Every possible response has been pre-approved by doctrine. Deviations require justification. Justification requires time. Time is not available. The system moves faster than doubt. Those positioned at intermediary levels act as conduits. They receive the order, verify its authenticity, and pass it along unchanged. Their role is not to evaluate, but to ensure continuity. Accuracy is measured by fidelity to the original instruction, not by outcome. Silence accompanies the process. There is no discussion because discussion would imply uncertainty. There is no debate because debate would suggest equality of perspective. The hierarchy exists precisely to eliminate both. Authority flows in one direction. Responsibility disperses in another. Training reinforces this pattern. From the beginning, individuals are taught that hesitation introduces risk. That interpretation invites error. That the safest action is the one most closely aligned with instruction. The system is efficient because it has removed the individual from decision-making. At lower levels, the order begins to take physical form. Schedules are adjusted, resources are reassigned, personnel are repositioned. Each adjustment is minor in isolation. No single change appears consequential. The danger does not reside in any one action, but in their accumulation. Supervisors ensure compliance through routine checks. Reports are submitted. Timelines are confirmed. Deviations are corrected immediately. The system is alert, but only to inconsistency. It does not monitor relevance. The order continues downward, intact. By the time it reaches those closest to execution, it has been transformed into a series of tasks. Each task is clear. Each has a start time and an end time. Each is framed as necessary. None are framed as optional. Those tasked with carrying it out do not see it as a singular directive. They see only their portion. Their responsibility is narrow by design. They are not expected to understand the broader purpose. They are expected to perform. The structure ensures this separation. Information flows vertically, not laterally. Coordination exists, but only within predefined channels. Any attempt to connect observations across units would require permission. Permission would require justification. Justification would require explanation. The system does not pause long enough for that sequence to occur. Confidence is embedded in the process. Because the order has passed through so many layers, it feels validated. Each transmission acts as confirmation. Each acknowledgement reinforces the assumption that the instruction is sound. By the time it reaches the lowest tier, it carries the weight of the entire structure above it. No one feels ownership of the whole. Authority has been distributed so evenly that it becomes invisible. The order appears not as a decision, but as a condition, something that exists independently of those who carry it. The system is functioning exactly as intended. Nothing within it is designed to stop the order once it has been accepted. There is no reverse channel for doubt, no protocol for reconsideration. The structure assumes that errors occur only through disobedience, not through obedience itself. And so the order continues its descent, unaltered, efficient, unquestioned, protected by the very hierarchy that gives it power. The order reaches the point where action replaces transmission. There is no announcement to mark the transition, no moment where instruction becomes event. The system does not acknowledge that threshold. It treats execution as a continuation of paperwork by other means. What was written is now performed. What was scheduled now occupies time and space. Movement begins according to plan. Each unit acts at its designated moment. Not early, not late. Synchronization is precise. Watches are checked against the same reference. Signals are acknowledged in the expected sequence. There is no confusion about timing because timing has already been resolved by procedure. The order does not require initiative. It requires alignment. Actions unfold in parallel, not because of communication between participants, but because the structure has already arranged them to do so. Individuals act without seeing one another. Coordination exists without awareness. The system holds the shape of the operation, even as its parts move independently. No one asks why. The question is unnecessary. The order does not request understanding. It assumes that understanding exists elsewhere, at a level no longer accessible. Those carrying it out trust that the necessary considerations have already been made. Their task is to ensure that the order survives intact as it passes through their hands. Execution is quiet. Voices are low. Movements are deliberate. Everything proceeds within established limits. There is no urgency beyond what the schedule dictates. No acceleration beyond what has been approved. The system discourages improvisation by making it visible. Any deviation would be noted. Any variation would require explanation. And explanation is not part of the plan. Each action is checked against instruction. Each step is verified. Compliance is measured not by effect, but by accuracy. The system records success in terms of adherence. Whether the order produces its intended result is not yet relevant. The environment responds unevenly. Some elements align as expected. Others resist slightly. Minor discrepancies appear, small delays, subtle misalignments. They are noted, logged, and ignored. The order does not include provisions for adjustment. The system is not authorized to reinterpret it. Execution continues. Those closest to the action rely on routine to guide them. Training replaces thought. Repetition replaces evaluation. The body remembers what the mind is not required to process. Each motion has been rehearsed. Each response has been standardized. There is no signal to pause. The order does not account for hesitation. It assumes continuity. Once begun, it expects to proceed uninterrupted. Any interruption would require intervention from above. Above remains silent because no anomaly has been reported that meets the threshold for escalation. Information moves upward, but only in approved formats. Reports confirm compliance. Timelines are met. Checkpoints are passed. The language remains neutral. Descriptive terms are avoided. The system does not collect impressions. It collects confirmations. As execution progresses, the order becomes increasingly difficult to alter. Too many components are now in motion. Too many actions depend on preceding steps. The system has committed resources that cannot be easily withdrawn. The structure reinforces itself through momentum. No one steps outside their role. Those who might observe irregularities are not positioned to contextualize them. Their perspective is limited to function. The order does not authorize interpretation, only continuation. The safest action remains the prescribed one. Execution proceeds exactly as instructed. The system registers no fault. All metrics indicate normal operation. Compliance is total. Coordination is intact. The order has not been violated, questioned, or delayed, and because it is being followed so precisely, there is no remaining space within the structure to recognize that it is already failing. The first indications are subtle. They do not arrive as alarms or disruptions. They appear as small inconsistencies within otherwise orderly reports. Timelines stretch slightly. Alignments shift by degrees too minor to justify intervention. The system records these variations without assigning meaning to them. The order remains unchanged. Those receiving updates continue to process information according to established thresholds. Data that does not exceed predefined limits is categorized as noise. The structure is designed to absorb minor deviations without response. This resilience, once considered a strength, now prevents recognition. Execution continues. As actions accumulate, the gaps between expectation and reality widen. The environment responds in ways not accounted for by the instruction. Conditions evolve beyond the assumptions embedded in the order. But the order does not evolve. It was written to be complete. Communication flows upward, but only in fragments. Each report describes a localized condition. No single message contains enough context to suggest a systemic issue. The hierarchy ensures that information is filtered, summarized, reduced. What reaches higher levels is coherent, but incomplete. What remains below is detailed, but isolated. The system does not see the pattern. Attempts to reconcile discrepancies are constrained by protocol. Adjustments require authorization. Authorization requires clarity. Clarity requires time and scope. Neither is available. The order has already allocated both. Those executing the order encounter resistance, not in the form of opposition, but in the form of friction. Movements take longer. Coordination becomes strained. Dependencies misalign. These issues are addressed individually, as required by procedure. The system responds locally, never globally. The order persists. At each level, there is an assumption that resolution exists elsewhere, that another component, another unit, another function will compensate. Responsibility diffuses upward and outward, never settling long enough to prompt reassessment. Silence increases, not because nothing is happening, but because the structure lacks a language for what is occurring. The reports remain formal. The terminology remains neutral. There is no vocabulary for describing failure in progress. Only success or deviation, and deviation has not yet been declared. The order demands completion. Schedules continue to advance. Resources continue to be consumed. Commitments deepen. The cost of interruption grows with each passing moment. The system becomes invested not in outcome, but in continuity. Warnings emerge, but they are misclassified. Signals that fall outside expected parameters are treated as anomalies, not indicators. They are logged for future analysis. Future analysis has no role in the present sequence. The order does not permit retrospective adjustment. Those within the system sense that alignment is deteriorating. They do not articulate it. They cannot. The structure does not reward intuition. It rewards compliance. Any expression of concern would require framing within accepted formats. Those formats are inadequate. The order moves forward, intact. By the time the accumulation of inconsistencies becomes visible, it is no longer possible to isolate their source. Cause and effect have merged into process. The system cannot distinguish between execution and consequence. Attempts to escalate are delayed by procedure. Each request must pass through channels now saturated with routine traffic. Responses arrive late, or not at all. The order continues to operate on its original assumptions, unaware that those assumptions no longer hold. The failure is no longer theoretical. It has entered the system as a condition, not an event. It does not announce itself. It unfolds within the same structures that once ensured efficiency. The order remains active, authoritative, unquestioned. And as the gap between instruction and reality widens beyond correction, the system continues to advance, committed fully to a path it no longer understands. The breakdown does not arrive all at once. It unfolds as a series of confirmations that no longer correspond to reality. Reports continue to arrive on schedule, but what they describe is increasingly abstracted from what is occurring. The language remains controlled. The structure remains intact. The failure moves beneath it, expanding without recognition. The order is still active. By now, too many elements depend on its completion. Too many actions have been initiated to allow for reversal. The system treats interruption as a greater risk than continuation. Momentum becomes policy. What was once coordination becomes congestion. Processes overlap in ways not anticipated. Timelines collide. Dependencies interfere with one another. Each issue is addressed individually according to protocol, but no protocol exists for the convergence of errors now taking shape. The scale of the consequence grows quietly. Loss accumulates not through singular moments, but through absence of resources, of control, of alignment. The system continues to function, but its output no longer matches its intent. The order's language remains unchanged, even as the conditions it presumes disappear. There is no point of return. Any attempt to halt the sequence now would require authority equal to that which initiated it. That authority is unreachable, occupied, or unaware. The channels that once transmitted certainty now carry delay. Confirmation takes time. Time is no longer available. The structure begins to strain. Redundancies fail to compensate. Safeguards activate too late. Contingencies designed for isolated disruption are overwhelmed by systemic failure. The order did not anticipate resistance at this scale because it assumed obedience would ensure success. Compliance remains total. Those executing the order continue to follow it precisely. Deviating now would introduce unpredictability. Predictability is the last remaining asset. The system clings to it as stability erodes. The environment responds with indifference. It does not recognize hierarchy. It does not adjust to instruction. It reacts only to presence and pressure. The mismatch between command and condition becomes absolute. The consequences spread beyond their point of origin. What began as a contained directive now affects adjacent operations, adjacent structures. The failure propagates not through disobedience, but through adherence. Each compliant action reinforces the collapse. Silence dominates the upper levels, not because there is nothing to say, but because there is no longer a format in which to say it. The order has consumed the space for response. The system cannot acknowledge its own malfunction while it is still executing. Eventually, the process exhausts itself. Resources are depleted. Movements cease not by command, but by limitation. The order reaches its final instruction not because it succeeded, but because there is nothing left to act upon. There is no climax, no defining moment where failure is declared. The collapse is recognized only after the sequence ends, when the absence of expected results becomes undeniable. The order concludes as it began, formally, completely, and without comment. What remains is not chaos, but residue, a system that has followed its own logic to the end, and found that logic insufficient to contain what it has created. The system does not stop. When the sequence ends, there is no announcement to mark its conclusion, no signal to acknowledge that the order has run its course. Activity diminishes gradually, not by command but by exhaustion. Movement slow, reports thin. Silence returns, not as reflection, but as default. The order is no longer referenced. It does not require cancellation. It does not require correction. It simply expires, having reached the end of its prescribed actions. The system treats this as closure. The absence of further instruction is interpreted as completion. Records are finalized. Documents are archived. Timelines are closed. Outcomes are summarized in neutral terms. Language is adjusted to fit existing categories. Loss is measured indirectly, through discrepancies and shortages, not through description. The structure avoids specificity. Precision now would invite scrutiny. No single point of failure is identified. Responsibility disperses across layers that no longer intersect. Each level can demonstrate compliance. Each can show that procedures were followed. The order itself remains intact within the archive, unchanged, unmarked, indistinguishable from others that did not result in collapse. Review processes begin quietly. They are procedural, limited in scope. Their purpose is not to question the validity of the order, but to refine transmission. Minor adjustments are proposed. Additional safeguards are discussed. Don't address the central flaw, that the system executed a directive that should not have survived obedience. Life within the structure resumes. New orders enter the system. They follow the same pathways. They adopt the same language. The same confirmations are exchanged. The same hierarchies activate. Familiarity restores confidence. The recent failure is absorbed as data, stripped of context. Those who were closest to the consequences return to routine. Their roles remain unchanged. Their instructions are clear. The system does not require acknowledgement of what has occurred. It requires continuity. Memory is not a function of command. At higher levels, the failure becomes abstract. It is referenced obliquely, if at all, as an inefficiency, as an unexpected outcome, as a convergence of variables. The order itself is not discussed. Its authority remains unchallenged. To question it would imply vulnerability within the structure. The silence is institutional. It is maintained not through suppression, but through design. There is no mechanism to carry unresolved consequence upward. The system has already moved on. What cannot be integrated is left behind. Eventually, the failure loses its immediacy. It becomes a footnote, a statistic, a lesson reinterpreted to fit existing doctrine. The structure adapts around it, not because it understands, but because it must continue. Somewhere within the archive, the order remains, preserved in exact form, verified, authorized, executed as written. It does not indicate what followed. It does not require amendment. It waits alongside others, ready to move again if called upon. The system remains confident. Because it did not break. It functioned. it obeyed. And in doing so, it ensures that when the next order begins its descent, clean, formal, unquestioned, the outcome will once again be determined not by resistance, but by obedience.